All right, thanks to everybody who watched the first part of our stream. We're back here, part 2. Apologize for the technical difficulties.
Blame Amit.
If you missed it, I don't know if you guys can cut it together or just go back on the Patriots Press Pass YouTube page. We kind of opened up talking about Jacoby Brissett, what's gone right with him. Now I kind of want to get into what the issues have been for Drake May, and to me, it's mental. Physical, it's all as advertised. He can throw the ball a mile. He can throw it on the run. The size plays. He's not afraid to tuck and run, but I think what you're seeing here is what a lot of the concerns were about him in the draft. Not necessarily about him becoming a successful NFL quarterback, but just day one concerns. He played in a weak ACC for 2 years in college. Now he's out here. It's an NFL defense. It's a complex NFL defense. Things are moving a lot faster. He has to process a lot more information, a lot shorter period of time than he's used to. And I think there's going to be growing pains here at least through the next few weeks, maybe through camp into the regular season, where he just has to, the time to read and react has to shrink. And I think that is playing out. Like, we're seeing those issues play out a number of different ways, from overthrows to double clutches to bad decisions to things like that.
I think it is also notable that he's playing behind the second offensive line, which has not been good.
No.
There have been plenty of times where it feels like if it's not out quick or there's not a rollout or play action, he's usually having to make a very quick decision or make somebody miss. So there's no way of knowing just how much more confident or smooth he would be if he were behind the top offensive line, which, as we mentioned earlier, has looked pretty good, really surprising most of us. But there's clearly been a learning curve for Drake May. No timetable on when he's going to get over that curve. I don't think there really should be. That's why Jacoby Brissett is here. Right. But I think we were all expecting that maybe he would be able to, like, surprise and, really make this a competition. And I don't think we've really seen that over the past 2 days.
Mike.
Well, that's kind of where I was going when it cut off, when the stream cut. I think we figured that out, where, like, we knew what Drake May was going to be. We thought we knew what Drake May was going to be. We have our special guest coming in shortly. I'll finish this thought. But, you bring in Jacoby Brissett for a reason. You bring in Drake May, obviously, for a reason to be your next franchise quarterback. He's the number 3 overall pick. You want to get him on the field immediately. But that just hasn't been the case, and I think that's okay. I think we just need to slow down a little bit. That's enough about my soapbox. We have a special.
Well, hang on. Before we hear from Drake May's biggest supporter, let's hear from his second biggest supporter.
Okay.
Brian, your thoughts on his first 2 padded practices? There's a setup there. We're gonna. This is gonna be a super crossover in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything looks a little too fast for him out there, just from the mental side of the game. But as Taylor said, he hasn't got many favors working with that second unit. The second offensive line hasn't been great. Mitchell Wilcox can't catch a football.
He caught a couple today, Brian.
He caught one. He's a blocking tight end, but so
kind of hung about to dry on that one sticker out where he got sandwiched. That was tough.
Yeah, Drake May hospital balled him a little bit today.
Yeah, he did.
Like, my big thing from Drake May in college was he could elevate a lot of this talent. So you'd like to see him maybe. That's why I say underwhelming a little bit the last few days. You'd like to see him elevate that. I would still love to see him at some point with the starters. You mentioned that took Mac Jones till like after the first preseason game. Jalen Reagor even mentioned that after practice. Like, once you see him get more reps, more opportunities, you're really going to see the talent and why he went 3rd overall. So underwhelming, I'll still go back to, but not hitting the panic button or anything right now.
All right, let's bring him in.
Come on.
Evan Lazar joining the crossover. So this is a big-time crossover. We got original Patriots beat, old Patriots beat, new Patriots beat, Patriots daily. We've got, Patriots press pass. We want to go way back. Catch 22 on Patriots.com. And I want to bring up Catch 22 because, Evan, we did our show last week on Thursday. We'll have another show this Thursday, again, Patriots.com. And you said on our show after, was it 2 non-padded practices?
That's all I needed.
That was all you needed. Drake May, week 1, book it. You don't want to deal with the nonsense of a quarterback competition. He's the guy.
That's a little bit strong for what I said.
It really isn't. Isn't.
That's what you said in response to what I said, which was that.
And then you said that's fair. And then you said that's fair.
Jokingly, I said
How
that's
you feeling
fair.
now?
I still feel the same way.
Wow, okay. Sticking to the take.
I'm not surprised by what we've seen. Right? Like, that's the biggest thing that I can't wrap my head around right now is, like, why is everybody acting like this is a surprise? Right. That a guy that we all told everybody, I'm sure, for 6 months, it's a little bit of a project. Right? Rome wasn't built in a day. He's not going to come out on day 1 and his footwork's not going to be perfect and his processing's not going to be perfect. Like, the biggest thing that we've seen from Drake May right now is that they're asking him to operate in the structure of a West Coast offense. And we have no ability whatsoever for him to extend plays. There's no broken plays. There's no playground stuff going on right now. And that's such a dimension to his game that we haven't seen yet. He's got to be better at the stuff they're asking him to do. There's no doubt about that. I'm certainly a little bit underwhelmed, like Brian said, about the fact that he isn't executing at a higher level. But in general, he's almost like he's playing left-handed right now because he's a supreme athlete and he hasn't really been able to show that yet. And if you're asking him to just sit in a pocket in an 11-on-11 drill and be Tom Brady and dice up a defense, that's not the guy you drafted. So that's why I'm not necessarily as strong with it. Maybe week 1 was a little pushing it. Maybe I was a little bit too excited on the week 1 promise or whatever you want to call it. But in general, I feel like Drake May is Drake May, and his time will come.
When's the last time we were on CLNS video together?
It's been a minute.
That might be pre-COVID.
It's been a minute. And
We did Patriots beat post-COVID.
He did a training camp show last year.
Oh, with us. You're right.
Yeah.
Maybe when I was in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So look, 5 people on the show is a lot, so we're gonna definitely want to keep it a little bit tighter here. But move in, Evan. Come on. Let me ask you this. We'll go. Let's go. Biggest Drake May supporter on down. What's the next step? What's the first thing that has to happen for him to start making the kind of progress you want to see? Like what needs to be over the next 3 days when they come back? What needs to be the main focus for Drake May, the coaching staff, whatever, to get him on track?
I'm the biggest supporter here.
That's how. You and Brian can fight it out. I set it up that way for the teams.
We'll lead the guys.
I would say timing and anticipation are the biggest things. Right now, I feel like he's maybe a tick or two slow to some things and some of the reads. If he starts to hit things in rhythm and on time, and let's face it, that's not really what he was asked to do at North Carolina, so this is an adjustment for him. But if we start to see in the coming days and weeks that he starts to do that a little bit more routinely, then I think we can all start to talk a little bit more about when does he start.
I think we just need to see, the more of a rhythm in the offense, plays being strung together and not, mishaps, right? And a missed read, and then he just has to kind of tuck it and run or something like that. And I think you're going to find that. I think you'll find that if he's given a chance to play with the first team, the first 5 offensive linemen and those, first wide receivers more, because he's kind of getting stuck behind Jacoby Brissett, rightfully so. That's the only way you're going to win a competition is if you shine with those guys and then get bumped up and earn those reps. But once you see him with the true first-team offensive guys he's kind of going to be expected to play with later on in the season, I think it's going to string together for him a little bit more. It's also tough against this Patriots defense, what we just talked about is one of the best in football. Now, you're not going to win football games if you can't compete against top NFL defenses. But at the same time, being a quarterback who, again, as you mentioned, Evan, is a guy who he needs time to grow, right? And we knew that beforehand. For him to just come in here against this defense, it's not going to be perfect right away. So I just think he needs more reps with the guys that he would play with on Sundays.
I would say the biggest thing I want to see is the game really slowing down for him. And that's one of the biggest things with any rookie. The processing was one of the biggest reasons I thought he could potentially start. I think earlier on in training camp, we were seeing he's not putting the ball in harm's way. He's hitting open receivers. You're not seeing with a lot of young quarterbacks, where he's throwing into bad windows and you're like, yikes, he did not see it right there. But now that we're getting more of a live pass rush and the intensity has amped up, I think you're seeing now there is an anticipation because it feels like things are moving quickly. He's getting through his reads too fast. Sometimes he's making a decision, then stopping mid-play. He kind of pulled it off and was able to finish early on, but the past 2 days, it's clearly been a bit of an issue. So I think if he can calm down his process, then things like the anticipation will come. Then I think you'll see more accuracy because he's not thinking quite as much. But when it comes to having to think and process at a different level on top of also needing to be accurate, as that was one of the things that really worried me most probably about him potentially starting, I think those things will come. But first, he's got to slow down a bit.
Brian.
Yeah, I think slowing down and the timing and anticipation, as Evan mentioned, that all goes together, and that's what we want to see. But maybe gaining momentum once we get out in those preseason games and he can kind of use that running around ability. And, he was such a good scrambler at the college level, and we don't see that on the practice fields because he can't get touched. He's in a red non-contact jersey. So once that element of his game gets added out there, probably in those preseason games, I think you could maybe start seeing some more momentum towards a week 1 or an early season start.
Way to be concise, everybody. No, we do details here. That's what we do. I want to pick on Evan about something else. Let's hear from our friends at Game Time real quick, and then we'll do that.
Dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park. This baseball season, I'm using Game Time to land my Red Sox tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's super easy. You just open the app, click Sports, and the games will be right there for you. Right now, you can get tickets to the Rollin' Red Sox for as low as $11. You can even buy parking for the game and check out your seat view right in the app. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, and more. Get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, we're back here. And I said I wanted to pick on Evan about something. We got to talk about Tyquan Thornton, guys.
Alrighty.
Because when we did this show before the last off day, we talked about, all right, Tyquan had a couple nice days, but the pads aren't on. Pads have been on. He's been good. Now, he's got to get through this thing healthy. Like, you can't stress that enough.
Right.
He hasn't been on an active roster week one his first 2 years. He's been on IR. But is anybody, raise your hand, is anybody ready to take the cheese on Tyquan
That's
Thornton?
one. That's a hand.
That's what, it's
Two
two.
hands.
Maybe.
Maybe?
Look, like,
Half a hand?
like you said, yeah, it's a half. He's been good.
Two
and
halves, one hand.
He hasn't, he hasn't gotten hurt yet, and like that's as crazy as that sounds. That's huge for him in year, what is it, year 3 now?
Yeah.
He hasn't, like you said, he hasn't been on the active roster. He's not. He's actually making plays when the pads come on. He's beating guys. So like, and again, one-on-ones, it's hard to just give Tyquan a win undoubtedly against, unlike that one play against Marco Wilson, because
Right.
there's no help anywhere else. So the corner doesn't know where it's going, obviously, but there's no safety help, there's no linebacker help either. So yeah, a guy who runs a 4-3 toasts a guy on one-on-ones, and we all anoint him to be back. I think that's a little much, but again, he's making again.
We?
Okay, me.
What do you mean we?
All right, fine. But again, there's the play yesterday in full pads over the shoulder, like basically
Falling to the ground.
falling to the ground from Jacoby Brissett. Like that's a play with the first team on I think it was Alex Austin who's getting
Yeah.
reps with the ones. Like that's not bad. That's something we haven't seen from him yet. So I'm obviously not totally in, maybe a quarter of a hand up. I think you know
Evan,
you might get something.
You put a little bit of a hand up, too.
You know I can always be convinced about Tyquan. Like you can always pull me back in on Tyquan.
So are you pulled back in?
I'm not. I don't. You know I don't allow myself to be pulled back in on Tyquan.
Ah, it
until
sounds like
it's
you
real.
want to be.
I do want to be, and the main reason why I want to be is because they just don't have a lot of guys on the roster that can run by people in the deep part of the field. So with this Alex Van Pelt offense, with all the play action, the bootlegs, and things that they want to do, there is a role for somebody that can take the top off the defense. And there are only so many guys on the team that have that kind of speed that can really do it. It's really just him or Jalen Reagor.
So let me ask you this, and just yes or no, because again, there's freaking 5 of us up here.
Yeah.
Or not yes. Who's been better, Tyquan or Jalen Reagor through 6 days?
In pads, I'd say Tyquan. Like, it was Jalen Reagor early. And then in pads, I'd say Tyquan. And just one last thing I'll say about Tyquan, and this is going to come off a little harsh, and I don't mean it that way. But he made the catch yesterday over his shoulder and went to the ground and didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Seriously.
and-
He landed
He
on the
said it.
collarbone too. Like right on the
And
collarbone.
I know that sounds mean, but last year I was in Green Bay and I watched it happen live right in front of me that he dove for a pass, went to the ground, and we never saw him again.
And we knew immediately. As soon as he hit the
Yeah.
ground, we were
Yeah.
like, oh, God.
Yeah, so the fact that maybe that extra 7-8 pounds of muscle, maybe it actually did some good.
All right, Taylor Brown, you guys sound ready to kind of put the brakes on this. So
I just am tempering expectations because I am excited for Tyquan Thornton. You said it, Evan. Like when you think about the Packers offense, we know that Drake May was shown Aaron Rodgers tape likely when he was with Alex Van Pelt. That Jordy Nelson role on early downs where you don't have to worry about press all the time, and then you can get up to speed and be able to take off like with Drake May on a post. That is the dream combination in my head. And I do want to give Tyquan Thornton credit. He's been making the catches thrown his way. He's out here. That's all we can ask right now. I am not going to be moved until we see him in live game action, be able to take more competitive hits, see him in preseason, how he's handling the physicality. But I want to give credit where it's due. Good for Tyquan, building, stacking quality days together. I feel like he and Jalen Reagor are definitely competing for that, like, veteran X-receiver spot, but Tyquan is doing what he needs to do.
Brian?
You'd rather have him playing like that than someone like Juju Smith-Schuster, right, who's on the opposite. So you
He
give
had,
him
he had a rough day.
you give
today.
him credit.
Watch out for
He's been
Russ.
having some good practices and performances, but he's got to be healthy. He's just got to get through it, and that's just a big question mark.
And I think something that I don't know that it's helped him in a football sense, but it's helped him in the external sense is the expectations aren't as high for him this year. Like he's kind of anything you get from Tyquan Thornton. I had him off the roster on my pre-camp roster projection. I think a lot of people did. Anything you get from him is a little bit extra, and you almost feel a little bit better about that through these first 6 days because these rookie wide receivers are showing out. We talked a lot about Jalen Polk on the last show. So, I mean, if you guys want to kind of chime in on him, we can talk about him. The big thing that stands out to me, like, he looks like a professional, and I don't just mean, like, talent level. I mean, the way he carries himself, just the rep to rep. He looks like he's been in the NFL. He looks like he's been through an NFL training camp before. But since the last time we did a show, now here comes Javon Baker, who had a slower start. He dealt with a thumb injury in the spring, and I think that set him back at the start of camp. But he wasn't lying about getting the popcorn ready. Highlight reel catch after highlight reel catch. The drops are still kind of there, but, I mean, I don't know. Am I too high on the rookie wide receivers? Brian, we can start with you since you've been wading through 4 other people.
No, they've been very good, I thought. And the involvement is very encouraging, too. Like, those guys are out there a lot, and they're playing a lot. Polk today, like, they moved inside the red zone for really the first time. 2 touchdowns, like, one up over Marco Wilson. Then he ran a really nice out route, caught it on Joe Milton. So he's just, like, Mr. Consistent out there. He's very involved and just steady production. And then, Javon Baker, even though we didn't have, like, the highlight play of the day today, it still just felt like he was getting open a lot in one-on-ones and teams. And so arrow pointed up for both of those guys early on.
Yeah, I'd say Jalen Polk kind of got a little bit quiet. I don't think it was his fault. Like, there's a lot of guys who were trying to catch passes and getting targets. But like you said, the red zone especially is where Jalen Polk has really stood out in those one-on-one situations, making those tight window contested grabs. And it's like Christian Gonzalez, not in the freak athleticism way, but how since day one they walked out. And it's like, yeah, no, this guy doesn't look like he's never been on an NFL field before. And Javon Baker in one-on-ones, dude got open deep. I think it was 5 times. Like, every time I looked over to his side of the field, he was behind.
It's so windy.
The wind is insane. It's like holding the camera with 2 hands. Javon Baker was getting open consistently deep, but because of wind like this, as Jalen Reagor pointed out after practice, there were a lot of overthrows. So the rookies, I'm gung-ho on them. Again, Jalen Reagor and Tyquan Thornton made it more of a competition where I'm like, okay, you don't necessarily have to throw Baker out there as that X receiver, but I'd at least like to see him get some one-on-one opportunities. Then Polk, I think he could definitely be one of your top guys early on.
Jalen Polk's going to play immediately. You can see it. They already have him in there with the ones. They're already trusting him in. We talked about it in our stand-up earlier, Taylor, where they're doing like a field goal drill, and they have the ones out there to try and get them in field goal range. And the play goes from Jacoby Brissett to Jalen Polk, run it inside, get to the line, and kick the field goal. And, like, that's something you're seeing from the 37th overall pick immediately. I love that. You guys mentioned it already, his consistency in not only across the board, but in the red zone, right? He scores 2 touchdowns today. So I've been high on Polk, and nothing's changed there. And Baker, too. I mean, I literally brought a bag of popcorn out for our live show the other day when Javon Baker was
Couldn't bring that here today. It'd be
You're
everywhere.
welcome.
Yeah, he was awesome.
My idea.
Yeah, Brian Hines' idea. Shout out. So,
Evan.
Evan, here you go.
So when they drafted Javon Baker, I was down at my desk, the admin level of this building, and I jumped out of my seat. And I did not know that he was going to say I'd get people to jump out of their seats just a couple hours later. So I have liked Javon Baker from the start. And the main reason is some of the things that Taylor was saying, just that ability to create separation is something that this team hasn't really had necessarily. And I think both those guys, the good thing that you can say about both of them is that they've come as advertised so far in camp. Jalen Polk, probably going to be that steady Jacoby Myers type, move the chains, second level of the defense, I think is where he's going to live. And then you're going to get the splash and the flash from Javon Baker. I'm more of a flash guy, I'm not going to lie, but I both of those guys are doing their jobs. I just think with Polk, the one question I'd have with him is there another dimension after the catch? Like, is there another gear to his game that we haven't necessarily seen? And then with Javon Baker, it's consistency. Like, is he going to be one of those guys that's good for one game and then disappears for 2 and then is good for another and disappears? So both those guys I feel like are as advertised so far, and that's a good thing. You want to get into your first training camp and say, that's the scouting report. This is the player that we thought we were getting, even if it's not necessarily putting a ceiling on it just yet.
All right, let's do a quick thing on the defense, and then we'll kind of wrap this up, look ahead to next week. Again, like, I don't feel like there's a ton of report. I mean that in a good way in terms of what's happening on the field now. Off the field stuff is, with Matthew Judon and all of that. Just give me Just give me the number. Don't explain. Just give me the number. Percent chance he plays a game for the Patriots this year.
Oh boy, that's a good question.
We'll let you think about it because you got to make sure you calculate the team employee factor in Brian.
55% he'll play.
That's right. That's where I'm at. Like after yesterday,
it was high.
I was at like
pretty
95.
High, and then, after yesterday, it's definitely fallen down.
Taylor.
I'm at like 35, 40. I just think the way it was handled, and this is a new regime, they need to start like sending messages when things like this happen. And it felt so insubordinate and so public that I feel like it burned some bridges. I'd love to see Judon back as a player, but it just felt like such a uniquely odd situation. I don't really know how you recover from that with him still in the building.
Mike.
I love when you ask for a number and everybody just talks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's not just
Okay,
you.
so give me the number
wasn't
instead of
just you.
explaining
It
what's
was
happening.
It was Evan too. No, I know. It was Evan
Give me
too.
the number instead of explaining what's happening.
45%.
45. So, look, I think that...
He's talking.
Were we not supposed to talk?
Do you want to go? I don't know. I don't want to put you in a spot here.
I'll say I'm still at like 65%
Okay.
he plays just because the time of year. It's pretty difficult this time of year to trade a player that caliber and really get anything in return for him, and you're not going to cut him. So, like, you're really looking at a situation now where for both sides, you're a week into training camp. It's not really the time of year to maximize value. It seems like they're both going to have to sort of live with each other for the time being.
Well, that's why I worry about, and I've been saying this since February. I've been comparing it to the Stephon Gilmore situation from, I think that was 2020, right? The COVID year, where very similar. Like, they borrowed money ahead the year before. He's in the last year of his deal. Gilmore opens the season on PUP and then gets traded for nothing midway through the year. And I wonder if we're going there with Judon. Look, I think it's on the team that it got this far, because, and I've talked about this, if they had dealt him back in March, I think they would have gotten a top 100 pick. If they knew they weren't going to pay him, they should have traded him. I would have paid him, but if you know you're not, you can get something for him. But for it to get to this, like, the team shouldn't let it get this far, but Judon could have also handled it better than he did yesterday. I think everybody looks the lesser here, and that's why I think ultimately, you really have to start to think about a parting of the ways. I will say, real quick.
I just thought of something really quick. I should probably throw this in. Based on what happened with Trent Brown last season, like, he stuck around. They actually gave him more money after all that. So actually, I kind of walk it back. I'll put it closer to 50
different,
because, like, very different. But like, Judon is not Trent Brown.
He's not.
I'm just thinking, like, that was another one that was just so odd, and it's like you kind of reward him. So maybe I'll bump it up to like 40.
I would also say different people running the organization too.
For sure. For sure.
On the field though. So let's say Judon doesn't play. I'll give you a name. Look him up, because I don't know how many Patriots fans are familiar with him.
You better pronounce this correctly.
O'Shea Jimenez.
Yeah.
O'Shea Jimenez, free agent signing from
We had
totally
a long
would've said-
breakdown on Pat's beat last night how to pronounce his last name.
I would have said O'Shane Jimenez.
I thought it was Jimenez.
Jimenez.
Okay.
That's what the media guide says. So
Okay.
And it's never wrong.
the media guys no, they do a good job, but he's been getting more reps the last couple days. He's
Company
been
man.
good. He had 2 run stuffs today. He had a pressure today. Like, we're going to need to start looking. We can bring Christian Barmore in here too. Obviously, we don't know when he's going to play. I think to expect him to be ready for the start of the season is premature, to put it lightly. There's going to be other guys that need to step up and make plays, and it's been Jimenez on the edge and Tristan Hill on the interior. Tristan Hill is a very interesting player to me, because this is the kind of guy that was if Bill Belichick was still the head coach, we'd be being like, oh, look, they found this guy, because second-round pick by the Cowboys in 2019, didn't really pan out, has bounced around a little bit, actually was signed by Bill last year to the practice squad, only got in 1 game. I think he played 4 snaps, but you start to look, we talked about how good that front was and how much depth there was. That depth's getting tested now, but early on, as much as things have kind of been shaky for the offense the last few years, defensively, it seems like maybe they pushed some random buttons that worked again.
Yeah, they've been out there and they've been good. One other name who, he was a second-round pick, so high expectations, but we said maybe he could be almost the cherry on top if he takes that next step, was Keon White.
Yeah, he's been good.
And someone who might have to play like a big-time role now if they don't have Christian Barmore, if Matthew Judon, who knows how that's going to look. And he's had a good spring. Gerard Mayo called him out. He had a good start to the summer. Today he was really active. I think couple pressures, run stuff, so he's been really good as well up there.
Been awesome to see Jimenez stand out there on the field. He was someone I had on my roster projection just because I like the versatility. I looked more into his pass rush film. He's really good at like beating guys' hands. Got a little bit of versatility as a rusher.
Can I ask you this, Taylor?
Yeah.
Player comp. I just thought maybe it's the number. Jabal Sheard?
Every time I see
I don't
93,
think he's
I
as
think it's
powerful.
Shear.
Like Shear
No.
was like a really strong dude. I don't think he moves the same way.
I remember Shear
Jimenez is
being
a true
quicker.
linebacker.
Maybe okay.
Yeah, honestly, I think he's.
I think
the
I got
way that
got
he
by the
wins
number
is
and the
kind-
build.
He kind of wins like a less juiced up Judon. I'm not
Okay.
saying they're the same player, but just if you look at how they rush the passer.
Well, if you need him in that role.
Yeah, and Judon like goes inside more. I think Jimenez's success has come more outside. But when you look at the way that they beat tackles, it is very similar. Also, Jeremiah Farms has flashed a couple times against the run, so I want to shout him out.
I'm glad you. Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm glad you mentioned Farms because yes, like Uche comes back today after getting thrown out of practice yesterday. But there was a time where when Judon left, when Uche leaves, and Godchaw's kind of in and out with his contract thing, where you go from having Judon, Barmore,
Uche.
Godshaw to Farms and Equale and all these guys, and it's like with the ones. And so I know we're kind of all repeating ourselves here, but it's wild to see it being tested this early, only on day 6 in the pads. But you're right, they've all shown up. Guys like Tristan Hill, obviously, you know. I was literally just about to say Jabal Sheard because he looks like him out there. But O'Shea Jimenez looks really good. Has a couple pressures yesterday, a couple would-be QB hits. So the fact that it's been tested, but it's different numbers, but it looks the same and they've all impressed, it says a lot about the depth of the defense.
Evan.
Yeah, surprisingly, the Patriots.com employee is going to be a little bit more pessimistic about this situation.
Wow. Sunshine.com over here.
Right. So I was watching O-line, D-line one-on-ones today, and at least to my eye, I know everybody, it's subjective and you might have different numbers, but I had 9 straight wins for the offensive line to start off that drill. And you started to put it in perspective that without Judon, without Barmore, the one-on-one winners just aren't necessarily there. Like, I agree that they could probably get by with the guys that you mentioned against the run and in certain situations, and you cook it up on 3rd down and you'll be fine. But you start to really talk about 1st and 2nd down pass rush and just guys that can beat a tackle, can beat an interior player like Barmore can. And it does get a little bit dicey there without those 2 guys in there. So that helps Judon's case, certainly, to get him happy and on board. So we'll see. But Jimenez, is that
Jimenez.
I got to get this right. Jimenez. Jimenez. You remember Shalik Calhoun? A couple years ago.
Yeah.
So that's how the flashbacks that I get from watching him, like longer. It's got that burstiness off the edge a little bit. I agree with Taylor that he's got that first step. Like, I feel like that's how he wins the most that I've seen. So maybe something there with him in terms of edge rush and maybe a little bit more length and size to him than like a Josh Uche or someone like that.
All right. One, and I also, sorry, real quick, just want to highlight Joshua Bledsoe. He had a good day because Jabril Peppers out too. At each level, Barmore, Judon, Peppers, they're missing key players. Real quick here before we move on to what we're looking ahead to. If you had to decide today, who's your starting kicker?
Chad Ryland.
Chad Ryland.
I'll give it a Chad as well.
I leave that to you.
No. I specifically asked this because I want to make you. I was originally going to say only you would answer it.
Every single time on Catch 22 when we get to the 5 minutes I give you for special teams, I say, Barth.
Yeah,
take it
I'm in the
away."
host chair now, Evan. Who's your kicker?
I would say Chad Ryland as of right now. But I would like to see him actually kick in a preseason game.
Sure,
and,
fair.
And then we'll see.
Yeah, they did both hit from 47 today. They got 1 kick. They did the run the field goal team on drill.
You know what came up today on the hill with I
What?
believe it was Kevin Stone, the Quinn Nordine in stadium.
Oh, the
practice.
Quinn Nordine 10 for 10 in stadium.
10.
A seminal where were you moment in
Yeah.
Patriots history. There's 28-3.
Yeah.
There's the Brady to Moss for the
Snowball.
record, a snowball.
Quinn
And
Nordine.
Quinn Nordine's 10
in
for
stadium
10.
practice.
Shout out Tom Curran. That's his joke. I
Yeah.
just love it. Ahmed, are we good on we good paying the bills here? We keep moving? All right, cool. I just want to make sure.
Who's your
live
starting
broadcast.
kicker?
Ahmed, who's your starting kicker? Not Chad Ryland. So Joey Slide. All right. As we look ahead,
Hater.
game week, essentially, and I know there's one more off day in here, but they'll return to practice on Thursday. The Thursday after that, they take on the Carolina Panthers. I thought maybe I even saw one period of scout team today. There was something that kind of looked like that. Let's start here. One player who you think is riding high momentum-wise, maybe has surprised you. One player riding high momentum-wise heading into the first preseason week. Brian, we'll start with you since you're fiddling with the water bottle.
What was the question again?
Who's one player who you think momentum-wise is like helping their case coming into the first preseason week with some momentum?
Caden Wallace has been. Sorry, I know he's your buddy. He's your buddy.
I want different names. You
Was
can agree,
everyone-
but I want
All right,
different
oh,
names.
good thing I went first now. Caden Wallace, he was really good yesterday, I thought, for a first padded practice, one-on-ones, team drills. Evan, he wasn't as good in one-on-ones, I don't think, today. But
no. And just one little note: don't throw the rusher into the quarterback. Like that's not like it looks impressive, but that's not a win. All right?
But I thought Caden Wallace the first 2 days in pads have been gaining momentum, as you said, and the coaches, his teammates, continue to talk very highly about him. So I thought it's been a good start for him. Now, back at left tackle where they originally said after they drafted him.
Taylor.
I'll go with Javon Baker. It was another day where this was one of the first days in a couple that there weren't any splash plays. But again, he was getting open. He just wasn't getting chances to catch the ball. And I really just think he looks very different from every other Patriots receiver out here. So I'm excited to see him go against another team.
I wanted to say Austin Hooper because he's riding high in his familiarity in the offense. I just don't think he's going to play in the preseason this year because he's an old veteran. So I'll go with Kevin Harris. I think Kevin Harris has looked good. And
Dog days of summer here in Boston.
RB, really the RB2 because that's Gibson, but a guy that's gonna really change your pace, run the football behind Ramondre.
I was gonna say I hope we get one defensive player, but Evan won't.
No, I'm definitely not going
I think so.
But I think the biggest thing to me is we mentioned Drake May earlier.
You think Drake May's coming into the week with momentum?
No,
I was gonna say who's a player who needs to catch up during this week.
Okay.
So maybe there's a part 2 to this.
I was just thinking, we were talking about earlier that I'd like to see him when he gets to run around a little bit and do some of the Drake May things that he would do at North Carolina. Maybe not throw lefty, but like all the other stuff that he does well in that improvisational mode of his. But I would just say I don't know how much of Mike Onwenu and Andrews and City we're going to see, but that's probably been my most positive development so far about the offense is that the offensive line has looked functional. And we've all been out here the last couple camps, but it's been a minute since I've said that, oh, wow, they're not a train wreck up front.
They're making progress.
Yeah, and they're making progress, and it seems like they're getting better every single day. Probably have to go all the way back to 2021 from the last time that I said, okay, they'll have a semblance of an offensive line. So if that can continue, then that's a foundational piece that as you move forward, you're hoping is going to work out.
So I was going to say Zimenez because I thought one of you would say the guy I actually think, and I wanted to mix in some defense. I can't believe I'm about to do this, and I'm going to regret this.
Don't say Mitchell Wilcox.
No. Tyquan Thornton.
No.
Tyquan Thornton comes into this week with real momentum. And to what we talked about before, can he get through a game week now and get through a game continuing to look better? Like, Tyquan Thornton is a really interesting story for me going into this week. I'll say I could have said Joe Milton too, and you really would have lost. Because he's coming in with momentum.
I'll add another receiver. Yeah. That's Jalen Rager because he's looked good, and then we're actually going to see the kickoff in action.
That's
so
true. In the kickoff,
how they handle that.
Chad Ryland, momentum.
If we want to throw in another defender, special teamer, Marcus Jones. He's looked good on defense. I feel like almost every day he's either got smothering coverage or he's got a pass breakup, spending a lot more time in the slot where he belongs, and it looks like he's still going to be the primary punt returner, so excited to see him.
All right, Evan already answered this last question because Amit's getting restless, and I appreciate it. I think we're over an hour now. You guys have been great. Evan already answered this. Who's playing catch-up this week? Who really needs a good week, good preseason game to get themselves back on track?
I don't think it's been as 2 good days for Alex Austin out there on the defense. I love going first now all of a sudden. But, I mean, he's someone we talked.
Patriots beat.
Obviously ended last year well. He had a really good sprain. We were talking about him maybe being like the number 2 boundary guy, and you can move Jonathan Jones back inside. Just not as too good of the last 2 days with the pads on, so I'd like to see him bounce back in game action.
This almost feels like a cop-out, but Juju.
Come on!
Here we go. Well, I'm sorry.
Well, okay, wait. Let me ask you this. Can he?
That's
he needs to bounce back. Can he?
Physically, I genuinely don't know. Like today, he did have a really impressive catch in red zone work. He caught a slant. Like that was the first time I was like, oh, he did something good.
And then he tripped over a rock.
It's like, yeah, but like, it's just the explosiveness doesn't look like it's there. The competitiveness at the catch point hasn't really been there. I just, like, he is at the bottom, other than, like, Kawan Baker and the guys that you really don't expect. It's like, I don't see how Juju makes the roster. So if he can get some reps against lesser quality opponents and make himself look a little better, like, he really needs it.
I'll go with Chuks Okorafor. Starts at the left tackle. Doesn't look great. Moves to the right tackle when they start. He's been okay, but I didn't love him yesterday in one-on-ones or 11s. The rest of the offensive line has looked fine, but I'll be looking to see if they play that starting offensive line, how he looks on the right side.
All right, Evan, since you gave us Drake May needing to catch up when I asked who's been good, we're going to flip this. Who's ahead of schedule, do you think, coming into this week?
Well, I guess, I mean, Caden Wallace would be my answer, probably. I feel like he's on a fast track that I wasn't expecting to be a day one starter. And I just look at a lot of these guys on the offensive line, even Layden Robinson, too, to put both rookies in there. Scott Peters might be good at this. Like, maybe they have something there. And, we were talking about this on Unfiltered. Like, is it possible that the Cleveland guys just, like, know how to coach the line in the run game? Like, is that just a thing in Cleveland? They've been really good there the last 4 or 5 years in the run game, so maybe it's just a thing for the Browns and that coaching tree and that staff that they're pretty good at in the running game. But can I say one thing really quickly? All right, I just want to point out the setup.
Wait, hang on, we're going to do that in a second. Let me give mine. Hang on. This is out of mine. So Austin's a good catch-up player. Chad Ryland would be another one for me. But I'm actually going to go with Brendan Schooler because he's been playing a lot of defense out here. Gerard Mayo said the other day that there's not going to really be any more specific special teamers. He said only if there's a Matthew Slater type of guy, but the reality is you're never going to have that guy if you don't let them develop from there from the beginning. So I wrote about this on 985thesportshub.com this morning. I know, Mike, you like the plugs.
He's good at it, too.
Brandon School, I'm interested to see him at safety because they may need some depth back there, specifically at free safety. And there could be something there. There could be a Brandon Bolden-ish role. So I'm interested I assume we'll see it. I'm interested to see him in game situations at safety.
And one other guy who needs to be better, I feel like is pretty relevant, Bailey Zappi. It's not even that he's been bad, but Joe Milton.
We call him Bailey Zappi relevant?
I think so. Gerard Mayo said the quarterback
no,
situation
you're
is
right.
pretty relevant. And the fact that Joe Milton, who we all know, oh my gosh, hi, are you okay? Okay. We all knew that Joe Milton was a project, and the fact that
Joe Milton's been not bad.
Not bad. And the fact that it feels like, even though they're switching off team reps, it feels like Bailey Zappi's losing some ground. So for his professional career, maybe for the Patriots so they can get some kind of draft stock out of him or a draft pick out of him, I do think he needs to show something in the preseason.
I don't think Joe Milton's the Manhattan Project anymore, Barth.
No, he's not.
He's
all right,
front and
so
center.
I guess we'll have one more of these shows for the I'll tease this for the next show because we've gone on long enough and the equipment's all blowing over and whatever. I'm interested to see how they split the reps for the quarterbacks in the preseason game. I wonder if Jacoby plays, the Milton versus Zappi difference. The number we've used on Patriots Beat, and I think on Catch 22 also, for quarters for Drake May in the preseason. You have 12 quarters of football. I've used 6.5. It's going to be really interesting to see how that gets broken up next week. But that will do it for this.
We got to talk about this equipment.
Let me.
You're killing me.
I know. This crossover of crossovers, this Patriots Beat, Patriots Daily crossover, CLNS, Patriots.com
CLNS Endgame
crossover, right. I mean, who are we missing here, really?
John
Sayers. We'll have to get a 6th chair next time, I guess. But, Evan, it was good to be back on CLNS with you.
It was great to be back on CLNS. I always call it home. But you and I started in 2018. This is year 7. We're old.
Yeah.
And we had one camera that Alex lugged around all over the place.
I lugged around.
And I did not even lift a finger.
No,
and this
didn't.
guy did everything. And now you have 3 cameras. You have lights. You have all these microphones. Amit's switching back there on some switchboard.
It looks good. It looks
he's
real.
He's playing highlights while we're talking.
This is all you and I are to credit for this. We built this.
Well, again, who was the one carrying all the equipment, running all the social media, doing all the editing, posting everything, which, by the way, is now done by 5 different people who all do a fantastic job at it. But who was the one doing all of that if we're going to give the credit to the good old days?
I just watch football.
I'm just saying, but it's been good being on with you.
It was just very cool to see how far we've come.
This is a great setup. So Evan will have more coverage, obviously, on Patriots.com. New Catch 22 coming on Thursday, probably 3:30-ish, right?
Yeah, around there.
Brian, more stuff on patspulpit.com. We'll have another Patriots beat. We're off tomorrow, so we'll be back on Thursday with that. Patriots Daily, CLNSmedia.com, Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles. Are you guys doing a show tomorrow?
I'm recording something.
Okay,
tomorrow,
so there'll be a Patriots Daily tomorrow. You can check that out. You can find more of my work on 985thesportshub.com. All right. I need a break. Hosting a 5-person set is not. This is like a around the NFL.
Tony Reale.
NFL Today set. Not even because Tony Reale can mute people. I could mute Evan when he answers my question the exact opposite of the way I intended him to do it. This is again, NFL Today, NFL Countdown kind of thing.
Okay, relax.
College game day. Anybody want to do a headset pick before we wrap it up here? Who you got? Week 0. I think it's Florida State, Notre Dame. We'll have time to get to that. But shout out to Amit and the crew back there also who did a fantastic job. If you missed the beginning of this show, if you're looking for the beginning of the show, we did have a technical difficulty, got cut off, so the first half is up on the Patriots Press Pass channel. You can find it and then, jump over to here. So thanks everybody who watched. Until the next one, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.